Good afternoon, everyone. We'll just wait for a couple of minutes for everyone to join. Hope I'm audible and the screen is visible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think we can get started. Almost everyone is here. Okay, so good afternoon again. So welcome to this course. It's a PG elective course, W5527, Sensor Arrays and Imaging. And I think the participant wise, it's a mix of uh, people from MTech SOCD and research scholars. In fact, research scholars, we don't need any interaction because they all know me very well. And MTech SOCD, I think we didn't interact much, but hopefully through this course, we'll be able to interact quite a lot. And yeah, so let me just disable the hop. Everyone is here. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so the course wise, in fact, MTech SOCD, I gave a brief overview of the course, but a few of the research scholars, they may not be having that video. So I thought I will just quickly give a brief overview again. And you can actually feel free to stop me anytime or put in the chat window, because this course is not like the typical UG course that we have. It's more on the lecture side. This course will be more interactive and more like a journey where all of us will go through it together. And since the audience is also sort of versatile, there are a lot of computer science background people also, BTech from computer science also. So we'll keep it more everything, whatever we discuss, we try to build from scratch. And obviously, those who have background in signal processing will feel that some of the topics may be like revisiting again, which I feel it's good for everyone. When we know a topic and we again talk about it, probably we'll learn it again in a different perspective. So I'll try to put that all the way. And it's a 3 credit course, you all know that. And even though we put it as 3 lecture hours, we will try to have a lot of programming exercises. And I prefer it to be MATLAB. Only reason for preferring to be MATLAB is like whole lot of programming becomes easier from different aspects. But if you are very comfortable with Python and you don't want to really go into MATLAB route, I'm fine with that. There's no issue. But it will be always easier to do it in MATLAB than Python in most of these exercises. So whatever we learn, we'll try to do in practice as well, so that we have a better feel of what we learn. Okay, and everyone hopefully knows me by now. And any queries, questions offline, if you are feeling shy to ask during this time, always I'm available in the email ID mentioned here. So you can always email me. I try to reply to you within a day or so most of the time. And then as some of you had, particularly from MTech SOCD, had the question that digital signal processing and linear algebra are they mandatory? As I think I replied to some of you who raised that query, it's not like mandatory, but it will be always beneficial. So you will be able to grasp some topics with ease if you have this background. But even if you don't have it, as I said, we will try to put it from basics so that you will understand it. And always stop me in between if you're not understanding any topic. Okay, so that's all about the overview of the course. And then if we move on, objectives and outcomes is sort of mandatory slide to have, but it's also good to know what you will expect in the course and what you will learn out of it. So as simple as that, I would like to put this way. If you see most of the systems that you have, they do have an array of sensors. Even if you take a mobile phone that you have, the microphone numbers has increased. Earlier, we started off with a single microphone. Now you have at least minimum 3. Even low cost mobile phones are minimum 3 microphones there. And cameras, for example, already was a bunch of arrays right from the start, right? We can't think of a single sensor camera, which in fact has been gaining popularity because of the concepts like compressed sensing and all. Single sensor cameras are popular, but again, they are trying to mimic the effect of an array of sensors using a single sensor. Okay, so even there, the concepts that we learn in this course will be relevant, even if it's a single sensor or multiple sensor. Whatever concepts that we learn in this course is applicable to image formation. So whenever you see an image is formed out of any modality that you take, that will either have a bunch of sensors to start with, but even if it doesn't have a bunch of sensor, even if it only have a single sensor, but still if an image is formed at the output, it has all the ingredients that we learn in this course. Okay, so that's as one-liner says, how images are formed. It's a very fascinating area as a human being. We're all excited by visual aspects. Maybe sound or listening comes second, and then only we have other aspects. Whenever we see something, it just gets strike or just gets embedded in our mind for a long time, right? So that's, and it's really fascinating to see how images are formed. So that's all this course about. And at the end of this course, as an outcome, so it's my role to make sure that these things are met. So you will be knowing, so you will know how to create, if you are given an array of sensors, you will know how to create an image out of it. Okay, so and then you will, in that journey, you will actually understand the type of arrays, what is the importance of placement of arrays, how images are formed, what is that process which converts that raw signal from each array into an image that we see. All these things you will be able to do by yourself. So that's what I expect as an outcome from this course. And then outline of this course, we will not stick to it as it is, but just for the way the syllabus is approved, this is how it looks like. And the first part is actually, so I would like to put it this way, so don't get biased by seeing, okay, wave equations, standing waves, Fourier series and all, don't get lost into that. The concept of first module is all about physics of the medium, okay? Because if it is an imaging, we are imaging a medium, right? Something in front of us. So we need to understand how the medium behaves. So that is a very key aspect so that we can create the sensors accordingly and then image that medium. So first module is more towards that, understanding that physics behind the medium that we are trying to capture. So in this course, I tried to take one particular type of sensor and try to go through rather than jumping into all types of imaging possibilities. So what I took actually is Okay. Is my voice echoing? Is there any issue?
No, sir.
Okay. So Mimisha, I think maybe it's your side. I think you're logged in as two account. Maybe you can log out in one of the account. Probably it's echoing between them. Okay. So let's continue. Yeah. So first module is all about, as I said, it's about understanding that medium. So it's good to know about some of the max behind it, and we will try to even simulate them so that you get a feel of what is happening there. And there is a reason why we are going to these pressure waves and all. The one reason is actually all coming from the electrical background. They might have already studied about electromagnetic waves a lot, because the electromagnetic theory and related aspects is already covered in the undergraduate curriculum. So instead of going through that again, I thought, well, let's go into the other one, which we have not touched up much in our engineering curriculum. At least we might have studied that. I mean, something like vibration physics, a bit about that in our +2, but we never care about them, right? One moment we study out of +2, we ignore them. So I thought we will just go through that again. And the reason why I choose this is because even for computer science people, they may not need to understand anything on this. We will start from scratch. So it's like a fresh understanding of the same phenomena. So that's the reason why I thought we will start with the vibrations, pressure waves rather than the electromagnetic waves. But having said that, the concepts that we learned from module 2, 3, 4, 5, everything is applicable to electromagnetic waves also. So this is in a way to introduce a medium and then use that to create an image out of it. Okay, so that's all about module 1. So in module 2, we talk about single sensors, okay, or transducers. So there is a subtle difference between the term transducer and sensor. So can someone tell me? Let's actually make it slightly interactive. Computer science people may be not knowing that, so I don't expect them to know this. But electrical engineering people should be knowing the difference between sensors and transducers. So what is the basic difference? So can somebody unmute and tell me, or you can actually put in the chat window. Both are okay. So the question is actually the difference between sensor and transducer.
Sir, hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, sensor is some device that detects some changes in the environment.
Yeah.
And transducer is something like a device which converts from one physical quantity to, or one physical domain to another, like from mechanical to some electrical, like that.
Yeah, okay, good, Narayan. So that is actually something which we tend to oversee most of the time. So sensor is something which we could call, I will just make generalized statement of what Narayan said, because computer science people may not be understanding that. So sensor is one way all the time. So you sense, as the name suggests, it senses. So it can be something like, let's say, what is microphone, for example. Let's take microphone. So you actually receive it, right? You are actually sort of receiving the sound from the analog environment that we live, and then digitizing it and then doing a lot of processing on that. Or any other sensor, any sensor that you take, mostly it's like one way. It senses the environment. It can be pressure sensor, temperature sensor, whatever you see, all the 5 sensors, right, we have in our body. They also behave the same way. It's just one way. It receives information from the environment and then tries to give it to the processing unit. In our human body, the processing unit is the brain. Now, transducer has a subtle difference. It's interesting. Transducer, as Narayanan said, is two-way. So you can actually enforce something onto the environment and then sense also. So we deal most of the time in this course about transducers. So for example, to generate sound and to receive sound, we can have the same transducer. So piezoelectric effect, if you're coming from electrical engineering background, is something you have studied a lot. So piezoelectric effect is something like when you apply voltage onto that piezoelectric transducer, it generates vibrations out. It generates mechanical waves out. That's what Narayanan was saying. So, and the moment the mechanical waves or vibrations or the sound waves fall on these transducers, they generate electricity out. So piezoelectric effect is a reversible effect. And the sort of generic way of mentioning them is the term we call them as transducers. So transducers are always two-way. They are used as sensors. At the same time, they can be used to create some excitations, to create an energy and send it out to the medium. So most of the time, when I say sensor arrays, we can actually imagine that transducers also behave in the same way. So I use those terminologies to and fro, and if you are very particular about it, please understand that subtle difference. But otherwise, you can safely ignore it. For the sake of this course, we consider them as the same. But from an electrical engineering perspective or an engineering perspective, there is a subtle difference between them. Sensor is not transducer and transducer is not sensor. It's a small difference. So transducer is two-way, sensor is one way. You can think that way. Okay, so that's very important to understand, even though it's not really, yeah, so somebody, Baiju, also mentioned the same in the chat window. So these sort of differences actually is important, but when we talk about a course like array signal processing and imaging, it really doesn't matter, because all we care about is we do have information from an array of sensors. How do we process that information and create image out of it? So that's our whole aim. So it's okay to even mislead these two, but strictly speaking, if you are going for if you're telling somebody about this, you should be knowing the difference in your back of your mind. Okay, so it's module 2. I just diverted a bit, but coming back, module 2 is all about studying about these transducers or sensors in some detail. We are not talking about the construction of these transducers or in that perspective, the electronic manufacturing, all those aspects we will not be talking. We will be talking more from how the information perspective, so how that transducer, single transducer or a single sensor produces something which is useful to us, how to control that energy. Okay, a single transducer produces an energy, as Narayanan was saying. So that energy can be sound energy, that energy can be light energy, or whatever you talk about. So that energy, how we make it in a more effective way, so that imaging, our objective is imaging, don't forget that, because you can use sensors or transducers for a variety of purposes, right? But in this course, our objective is to create images out of it. Okay, so you need to worry about how to form images. So we will talk about or understand about these transducers or sensors from the perspective of how images can be formed out of it. And that is why some terms like resolution, because when we talk about images, we are worried about the axial lateral resolution, right? When you go and buy a camera, we want as much high resolution camera as possible, right? As much as high resolution pictures as possible. At the same time, I don't want to spend a lot of cost. I want to have a camera which is actually lowest cost, but at the same time, I want the best resolution. Infinite resolution is ideal for me if I get, right? That's our all aim. All of us want that. So what is that exactly meaning? And how can I improve, or how can I select the sensors accordingly so that I get the best resolution out of it? And similarly, we'll understand what is actually the meaning of sampling. Okay, it's a term which keep on hearing this a lot. So we will understand that in detail, how sampling and what sampling means in an image perspective, and how does transducers can help us in designing or improving the sampling, for example. Then some more technical terms, side lobes, grating lobes, those who are coming from antenna theory or those who are coming from the wireless communication might have heard this term at least once or twice. So this is something again applicable to imaging also. We'll study that in detail. What is side lobe? What is grating lobe? So by the end of this course, you will appreciate that. Okay. So, and we will have equivalent terminologies in camera space also. So we'll touch up something similar. What are the terminologies that we use equivalent to what is known as side lobe or grating lobe? So they're artifacts. In fact, we don't want them. We want to suppress them. So how will you come up with sensors or in fact arrays to suppress them? So we'll discuss about that. Then I will not go into all these aspects because at this point it will be boring and you will not be knowing what all this. But as and when we go in detail, we'll introduce these topics one by one. And then the interesting aspect about it is all these names will appear to be jargons to you at this point. But moment we explain the physics behind it, moment we understand the maths behind it, you think, oh, I already know it. It is all about making a more official statement about it. So that's the beauty about all these terminologies, because day in, day out, you are using them. So the moment you are clicking a photo using your mobile phone, all these terminologies are there at the back end, and you know it, you're controlling it, but you're not officially knowing it, or you're not mathematically knowing it, or not physically understanding it. But this course will introduce you to all those aspects, and hopefully we'll even have some interesting projects or something like that going forward, where we'll work on all this knowledge as well. So this is all about single sensors, module 2, or single transducers, and then we make a jump to arrays. So instead of single sensor, if I put more than one sensor, how does the things behave? How does it help? So those things we will actually learn, and there is a concept known as beam forming. Again, those who are coming from the communication background, or those who are coming from the radar background or sonar background, some interest or some knowledge, or somebody who has looked into all these might have heard this term of beam forming. So this is fundamental to many things that we do in our daily life actually. So we will talk in detail about how beamforming, that process is done. And let me tell you that those who never understood this, it is the terminology, or it is the technique, or it is the signal processing behind how the raw signal from a sensor array is converted to an image, or the raw signal is used for detection, or raw signal from the sensors is used to, for example, in your mobile phone, when you speak to somebody, so your mobile phone is doing a beamforming through a base station. So you have so many base stations, right? Let's say you have an Airtel connection, or you have a BSNL connection. So many base stations of Airtel or BSNL are around you. But then all base stations may not be having the best energy. So your antenna array in your phone, you should have a technique which should actually direct your entire energy to a particular base station. So that process is known as beamforming. So in this course, we use that cleverly to image instead of all these whatever I was telling you as an example. So beamforming is again the process behind that image formation. So you have raw signals. You have from, if you put so many sensors in a line, for example, or so many sensors in the form of a matrix, for example. So each sensor will pick up some information. Now you need to convert that information into something which is actually like an image. So what is that process behind? It's known as beamforming. So we will study about that in detail, and then we will slowly move about the imaging process. So beamforming will give you something, but then we need to view an image out of it. So we have so many techniques available. So we will discuss on that in brief. In some of them we will take in detail because some of them are very interesting. So we will talk about that in detail. And then finally we will conclude with some applications, because all these we study is all the theoretical aspect, all the physics behind it and all the maths behind it. And it won't conclude until we take 1 or 2 applications. So here at module 5, we are all liberal. So all of you may be coming with different interests. Somebody like, for example, Atul, who is in our course, is coming from microwave background. So he can actually come up with a microwave application. So we don't have an issue. Or somebody from SOCD will be interested in camera, for example. If you are interested too much in camera, you can take that application and discuss. But in the course, I will just briefly touch upon microphone arrays and ultrasound, but we can even touch upon briefly about the cameras and the microwave imaging aspect as well. So different application perspective. So that is how do we use all these what we studied in module 1 to 4 will culminate in module 5 with some applications. On the textbook side, so we can have these textbooks, but I suggest you to actually take only online copies. You don't need to buy anything. Most of the things are available online. This book, for example, Zabo, is dedicated to ultrasound imaging. It's very expensive. So you don't need to buy that. A PDF is available online. You can download it and use it. Johnson and Degen is considered to be Bible for array signal processing. So if you want to buy that, I don't have any issue. You can go ahead and buy. But most of the techniques we will explain here in the class itself. So you can maybe build upon that. So I suggest a lot of materials in the slide itself. So you can go and refer to that instead of buying the textbook. Textbooks also are available online. So you can download it as well. And reference books also, you can actually, I think most of these books are available online nowadays. At least PDF versions are available in somewhere. So you'll be able to download and use it. Otherwise, don't worry. Even we will order some copies in library. If you're coming over to IIT Palakkad, you can always get it from the library. Okay, so let's move into the business side of it. So what's inside, I think MTech SOCD people might have seen this already, but for those who are not seen, so let's again quickly refresh. So whatever I put in the words here, let's put in some pictures. So we start with the physics part. So we will again start with the sound instead of the electromagnetic waves, the reason I already explained. So we again, this is like revisiting our physics in +2, okay, but more from an engineering perspective. So we will now think all these things from engineering perspective and what are learnings that we get from all these. So we will discuss about this. And sound is one of the most interesting phenomena in our whatever we can feel, right? In from that perspective, because you might be, some people at least get annoyed when they sit next to a speaker in a very, let's say some good, something is going on, some music entertainment is going on. Most of the people don't want to sit near the speakers because the woofers create so much of pressure, right? That's exactly what happening here. So much of pressure in the air, which is sounding like so bad for our eardrums, right? Our eardrums is like the sensor that we have on our body. So it feels like too much of pressure, too much of amplitude falling on our eardrums, and we feel irritated. So 90% of the human beings don't want to sit near to that woofer. So the reason is very simple, because it's a pressure wave, it's a vibration creating in the air, and you are feeling it, right? So this is something which you can feel. So that's why I thought we will take this up and understand this in some detail. At the same time, electrical engineering people should be able to translate this knowledge to the electromagnetics that we studied in the BTech. But computer science people, don't worry, we only need this background. We don't need anything else to go further. So sensors, then we talk about them individually. So you can put sensors like this and get data. So you pump, this is transducer in fact, that is why it is sending out waveform and receiving it back. So same electronics is reused as the transmission and the reception, and that is why it is called transducer. Okay, so you can use it something like this setup. You put it at one place, you sense the environment. You put it at the next place, you sense the environment. You can use an oscilloscope to receive that data, and you can actually see that signals. But that is not imaging, right? That is basically something like detection, you could say. You can actually detect a crack in a system, detect something else. So that is something which you want picturized as an image. That's not our course, but we can do that as well. So when you talk about sensors, applications are enormous, and one application is something like detection, and the other application which we will talk about in this course is about images. Okay, so this is about sensors, and then we stick them together as arrays. So instead of one sensor, I have a lot of sensors, and then I have a lot of control. If I have more than one sensor, let's say 10 sensors in place, then I can do something, as I said, I can direct the energy to a particular direction. So if you have a bunch of transducers, again, I'm reusing that terminology, sensor and transducers back and forth, bear with me, but you hopefully at the back end, you understand what I'm saying. So when we have an array of transducers, something like this, we have our control, we can actually direct them to a particular location. That is the beauty about having an array of sensors. If I have only one sensor, I are really handicapped. I don't have that flexibility. But if I have bunch of sensors like this, I can direct, okay, I can direct the energy to a particular location, and I can receive energy from a particular location. So always have that in mind. I can direct to a particular location, I can receive from a particular location. So you can now imagine what flexibility that we have, what power we have. I can listen to a particular region. I can image only a particular region in space. So that possibility is opened up the moment you have a bunch of transducers. If you have only one transducer, that possibility is very less. If you have more than one transducer, ideally maybe 10 or more, depending on the area that you want to image, you have that flexibility, you have the power, you have the flexibility to direct it towards a sort of region or a specific point of interest. Now let's come back to human body, because I always like that. Okay, so in the human body, I think it's an interesting analogy to have. You have two eyes and you have 2 ears. And God might have created it for something else, of course, for the reliability aspect, because one lost means one is still there. But there is an important aspect you are losing if you lose out on one of the eyes or one of the ears. Can you tell me? Can someone tell me what you will lose out if one of the eyes or one of the ears have a problem? So again, human eye is 2, and inside the human eye also it's a bunch of sensors. So we'll come to that. But irrespective of that, we have 2 ears and 2 eyes. And God might have created it. I think if you study philosophically, it may be because of the reliability, because one loss means another still there for you. But more than that, we are having a special capability, or in fact, not just humans, but all animals have that special capability with 2 of them, not one of them. If you lose one of them, you have a serious problem.
If we lose one, I think we cannot judge the exact correct position of the, we can see the thing, but the correct position, we cannot analyze how far or how near it is to us.
Exactly.
And same for ears also.
Yeah, perfect. So that's what I was driving here also. So if you have multiple of them, you have, so there is something known as, if you have 2 sensors, right? If you have 2 sensors, ideally 3, but if you have 2 sensors, you may be able to localize them in space. So that is the fundamental principle of these sensor arrays. We will go back and explain that. We will understand that in all possibilities in different perspectives. And always think that whenever you see now onwards, if you have multiple sensors or multiple transducers, just think that perspective. Okay, so that's one thought process I want to induce you, all of you, through this course. Okay, thanks Anupurba. So that is the exact thing that you will lose out. So you can actually do that experiment. You can actually put a cotton in one of your ears and then try to localize, and you remove that and try to localize, you feel the difference. And I think this occurs to us also. Sometimes due to cold and all, our one of the ears got blocked, right? You won't get perfect. And you feel all sort of irritation. You feel like, okay, something is lost. And that is exactly what we have lost. You lost the directivity. You lost the information about where exactly it's coming from. And that this particular thing of two things is what Dolby systems or the surround sound systems that we have in theaters make use of. So they basically make use of these ears that we have, two ears that we have, and the perfection of these sensors that you have over here to direct the sound in such a way that you feel like, okay, he's speaking from there and the other guy is speaking from here. So that's the beauty about the sound system. So applications are not just imaging. Okay, so it goes actually much beyond than that. So just a minute, I think my battery is running out. I'll just come back. Oh, sorry for the break. I think I have a chat. Somebody has put something there. Yeah, direction sensing again. Baiju has put that. So I hope I'm audible now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So yeah, so this is something which is very, very interesting. So we will talk a lot about that, the importance of the array of sensors compared to a single sensor. And then, of course, that's not where we stop, because we are not interested in directing it to some position, but we are interested in reconstructing image out of it, right? So that's entire process. So hope you will be very clear by this thing. So this is the entire thing that we will learn about. So from the physics out of it, then sensors, then arrays of sensors, and then how the image is formed out of this. So that's the entire journey that we are into. And then the evaluation criteria. So this is something which I just wanted to discuss. Being an online course, I really am not in favor of having this exam sort of thing every time, because more important is what you learn over the entire stretch, right? It should be more emphasis on the continuous evaluation. So that's how I made the evaluation criteria also. So you'll have some assignments, mostly some simulation or programming assignments, not the theoretical assignments. So 2 to 3 of them. So we'll try to load it less. So not much, but two to three significant exercises where you will learn the concepts. So you can even think of something, one on the simulation, the physics part of it, the first part of it, module 1, then another on the sensors and sensor arrays part of it, and then another one probably on the imaging aspect, on reconstruction aspect. So something like that. And then short quizzes. So those who have already taken the digital image processing course last semester might know already what I'm talking about. So these short quizzes are not something like time-bound quizzes. So this will happen like every 2 weeks. I will put a short quiz in the Moodle. So you will be able to answer that. And these questions will be multiple choice and maybe some small short answer type. So there's nothing too much difficult. All this will be asked from the videos that or the lectures that we take. So every 2 weeks, something like this is also feedback for me, how much you are following me. Okay. So that way. So this is something which is 6 to 7, I say, because every 2 weeks we will plan one short piece and there is no time. So there will be a deadline in the sense like you have to complete it before a particular day, but it's not like the normal quiz where you have time limit, like 15 minutes, you have to answer that. No, nothing like that. And you're free to discuss also. Among all of you can discuss and answer this. The more importance is for understanding it and the perspective that you have. So even if you discuss, the answer should be from your understanding. It should not be coming out of somebody else who answer was that. So you should put the same answer. Not like that. You understand it and put the answers. And then of course, there is one, because this is a PG level course. So it's important that you should be having some sort of self understanding of it. So we will have a separate 20%. That's a significant weightage on directed reading. And if you are not knowing what it exactly means, is something like you choose a paper or you choose a work which is available and then read on that and you comprehend that, okay, as a small report or a presentation. Don't need to actually present in the entire group, but you can actually give a slide or you can make a report and give me. And then I will of course circulate among all of you to how, so that each one of you understands what other person has been working on. So this is something which is very important, because at this level, MTech and higher, some expectation is something like you have some self independent work which you should be driving in the course. That is the expectation from IITs as well. So you actually, this component is significant, some 20% of it. And this can be any topic related to imaging. So whatever concepts that you learn over this, you take an advanced work in that field. And this can be a field where you are interested in, need not be what I'm talking about, but it should be related to imaging. And then you take that, you comprehend that, and you put a report out of that. Okay, so the details of that we will discuss as and when we reach that position, maybe towards a later part of the course, not immediate. And then of course there will be an end-sum exam, and this will be the time-bound usual exam, and that is sort of mandated nowadays. So a 20% weightage on that, but 80% is almost like continuous assessment and should be able to, I mean, not like too much of time-bound pressure for you in these cases. And last will be 20% end-sum. So any questions so far? Any comments or questions or any more information that you want to capture before we go into the last few slides? Yeah, feel free to actually, as I said, this should not be treated as another sort of a lecture-based course, because this is more only PG. All of you are actually MTech or MS PhD students. So the expectation is like the interaction will be more, and it should not be 5, because you will be going out and working somewhere or even teaching somewhere at some point of time in near future. So you should not be shy away from speaking up. So you can always feel free to express your opinion.
Sir?
Yeah.
Siski.
Yes, Himanshu. Yeah, Himanshu, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir, will the lectures will be recorded one, or like you are going to take live sessions?
Yeah, what I'm actually planning is there will be some recording, and then most of the time we will be having a live session with recording. The live sessions also I'm recording this course, this session included. So we'll post it over online also. But most of the time it will be sort of a mix actually, depending on some portions which I feel like it's easier to have video recording, I'll put it over video. Something which I want to explain that it's difficult to follow in a video, I will try to put up in the live lecture. And the live lectures also, you can actually feel free to ask based on the videos. So we will have maybe initial 10 to 15 minutes review of whatever we discussed or whatever I put as video. So during that time, you should be able to ask me any questions. Even outside of that, not strictly in that window, but even outside of that also, you can ask me questions. So yeah, it's a mix actually, not 100% videos, but we will have some videos and some topics which are difficult to convey over video. We will take it over live.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Yeah, any other questions? Okay, otherwise we'll move on. You can actually stop me anytime and ask questions. So why sensor arrays and imaging? Again, MTech SOCD people will be able to answer by now because they already seen this slide. So the very motivation, as I said, as a human, we like pictures, we like videos, right? That entire entertainment industry about movies and earlier motion pictures has been so much. It's all because we love to see things. We love to visualize things. Even our dreams, right? We should visualize things, right? Because we are bound to that. And whatever we see, it strikes in our brain, or it remains in our brain for quite a long time. Okay, so this all starts from that. Even the entire field of imaging is being really based on this entire concept of the liking towards images. Okay, so even if as I said, sensors can be used to detect things. It can be used to detect cracks. It can be used to detect corrosion. It can be used to detect your heart rate. It can be used to detect many other things. But we won't get the same satisfaction as you see the corrosion as an image. You see the crack as an image. If you see your heart beating, nothing like that. And those who are ladies always will go and see your babies inside your abdomen at some point of time using ultrasound. It's nothing like that. That feeling is something which is, you are seeing the picture of a baby who is not born outside. I should not be saying ladies alone, because even as fathers, you will also be excited to see that. Right? You are seeing a baby who is not born. You are trying to picturize that. Nowadays, the imaging technology has gone to such an extent that you almost see the real baby, almost see the real picture of your baby using sound. So that's the way the technology has progressed. But the entire concept behind all these, our tendency to have the visualization. Every time you see a picture, you are attracted to it, irrespective of what, you just get attracted to it. And sometimes you get something which is easier, more pleasing to your eye. And that is what exactly the philosophy behind all these developments that happened in this field of sensor arrays and imaging. Right from the start, which was very trivial in 1980s and all, to the sophisticated technologies that you have now, the entire fancy is to make it more and more attractive. And that's what you learn in this course also, how to make it more and more attractive, how to make more and more improved images or improved in terms of resolution, contrast, all these things. So let's see. Okay. So human eye, again, going back. So this is the best biological sensor array, I would say, in our human body. So just to refresh. Okay. So we do have a lens, right? We do have a lens right in front of our human eyes. Then you have something known as iris, which will it's like the zooming functionality you have in the camera. In the cameras that you have the optical zoom, right? So that same functionality is actually helped in the natural case by iris. I think you can test it now itself. Just try to look in front and look far. You won't be able to see something which is in front when you look far, right? I mean, just in front of you, because your vision, you're focusing at a later point. Or you can focus. That's the human eye is amazing. It's like it has a lens, and that lens has an optical zoom which you can control using your iris. So you stretch your eyes. The eye itself is like you can control that zoom using your muscular arrangement, and that is iris. Okay, so you control that so that you can focus at a far point and you can focus at a near point. So that is the beauty about it. So this same technology is what we are making in cameras as well. You have a lens in camera as well. You have an aperture, right? You call it as an aperture. You have an optical zoom. All these things are exactly replicated as in human eyes. We are trying to make it as an engineered material, right? So what exactly happens here is you have a lens. Light will fall from an object. From the object, light will fall through the lens to the arrangement of sensors that you have at the back end of your eye. So we call it as the retina. The official term is retina. The retina has a bunch of sensors. They are known as rods and cones, RHODS and CONES. So rods are actually sort of responsible for your low light vision, and they are distributed throughout, okay, throughout the retina. Whereas the cones are responsible for your bright light vision, or they call it as photopic vision. And they are concentrated in a very small region in the retina, and that is known as fovea. Okay. So most of the time when we are looking at a particular point in space, you're focusing at a particular point in space. What exactly happening is more energy from that point is falling on your fovea, and the remaining is getting distributed. The remaining wake that you see over when you look at something is falling on your rods, which are distributed throughout your retina. Okay. So then what happens is every sensor that you see over here is connected to the brain through the nervous system. So through the nerves. Okay. So all this is exactly similar to the circuit that we make. So the lens, the iris, which is controlling the optical zoom, the distribution of the rods and cones, which are the sensor arrays, to the nerves, which are connected to the brain, which is the processing. Everything is what similar to what you have in a camera. But having said this is a biological sensor array, and this is completely analog in nature. There is no digital systems. There is nothing there. And this operates in micro milliwatts, right? It won't take those much power also. So that is the beauty about human eyes. And you don't have just one of them, you have two of them, right? So each eye is something like an array of sensors, not just one eye. So two eyes, so two array of sensors that you have. And we already discussed what is the capability if I have two array of sensors, right? So that's much more than what we can imagine. So coming back to what I wanted to convey here is it all started from the human eyes, and then people have come up with different concepts. And then let's go to the next one. So this is natural. Now let's go to the human made. So this is the camera that you see in your mobile phone, for example, or the digital cameras that you have in your house, right? So this is the same setup. So let's not go into too many details of the arrangement because that's not our role here. So lens, same lens you have in eyes as well. Then some object here which you want to visualize, the light which falls on this object will come through this lens, and it gets focused on this charge coupled device, which is nothing but this arrangement of sensors. So you have the array of sensors over here, the CCD. So it's a type of sensor. Those who are coming from the electronics background already knows. So you have the CMOS array of sensors or the CCD array of sensors. Older days, we used to have the charge coupled device. Nowadays, you have the CMOS sensors. So that arrangement of sensors, it will be arranged in a matrix form, like a matrix, rows and columns here. So this is just a elevation view that we are seeing. So the light from this object will pass through the lens and then it falls on this particular charge coupled device or the CMOS array of sensors. And then we do have a shutter. So this shutter's role is actually to control the duration of the light, right? So if you allow, if there is no shutter, let's say, if there is no shutter, what happens is the light will always fall on the CCD. And then what problem we have is we don't know the amount of intensity, because the more the amount of time, the charge or the light intensity that is falling on this will become increasing, right? It just increases, and then or at some point of time, all the sensors will be having same amount of intensity over time. The energy which is there in each and every sensor will become same. So to avoid that, you put a shutter. The shutter's role is something like you open that and then you close it. So you measure how much amount is falling during that onto this charge coupled device. So then obviously some region will be reflecting the light more, some region will not be reflecting the light more. So that get captured in this CCD arrangement. And then you already know, those who are professionals in camera already know the importance of the shutter speed, right? So the duration that you allow light to fall on your sensors is what controlled by the shutter. And if you don't have a shutter, then over time, all the sensors will have the same intensity. So that won't help you to picture. So to picture, you have to control the intensity and you need to measure the intensity of light falling for a fixed amount of time. So that's fixed amount of time is decided by your shutter. So we'll go again, we will revisit many of these as we go along when we talk in details. But just to reiterate, the entire setup is something like you have a lens which try to focus the light energy onto an array of sensors. So again, the key concept for us in this course is that arrangement of sensors, which is very critical. Okay. And then this is the other viewpoint, the same thing. If I do it in a sort of other way, from looking from the top to this way. So you will see that there are some filters, because always imagine the light is actually having, the wavelength of light actually spreads to the infrared region as well as to the ultraviolet region. And you don't really want that. When you have an optical camera, you're only worried about the visible light. So you do have some filters which will actually filter out the unwanted electromagnetic radiations, and you only worry about the visible light, and that visible light again passes through these sensors. And even you have a color filter, because most of the time you will be interested in the red, green and blue components in the visible light, and then you put that on to the arrangement of sensors, which is actually at the top, bottom here, and the same as the CCD that you are seeing over here. So this is again a matrix arrangement of sensors, an array of sensors as we call again and again. And then this will be connected to your processing unit where you will do the processing, that imaging process that we will talk about in detail throughout this course. So this is optics. This is well known to you. And many people think that this is what we call about imaging, but not, unfortunately. The imaging is actually having a lot more breadth than we think about. So whatever we saw just now, okay, so let me just make it full screen now. Okay, so whatever we saw just now is only somewhere where? It's only somewhere here, right? So the cameras that we talk about is only covering this part of the spectrum, but the entire electromagnetic spectrum is in front of us. So you can use any of this, right from the larger wavelength or higher frequencies to a smaller wavelength, which is, sorry, the other way. This is the smaller wavelength to the larger wavelength. Hello. Yeah. So yeah, you can actually see over here. So this is the wavelength reducing. So basically the frequency is increasing towards this direction. You can actually see it from the perspective of the sinusoid here itself, which is drawn. It's just a pictorial representation of the increase in frequency. So you can use gamma rays to visualize an atomic nuclei. Okay. So you can, if you use gamma rays, you can actually see what is happening, what is the structure of an atomic nuclei. If you are using a radio wave, you can actually picture something at the level of, I think not buildings per se, but you can actually visualize something like, I think even now people are seeing the motion, something like the heart getting beaten in non-invasively by using our Wi-Fi routers itself. The technology has gone to such a level. You can imagine any wave that you take in this electromagnetic spectrum, you can use that to come up with an image. So that is the concept I want to drive from this picture. If you're not understanding it, don't worry, because we will take some examples as we go along. So only difference, what is the difference then? The only difference is the sensors, the transducers. So you have to use transducers which can generate gamma rays if you want to actually image at this level. You want to have an antenna which can generate radio frequency waves if you want to image at this level. If you want to use microwave, you have to have a sensor or a transducer or an antenna which can actually generate microwaves. So everything. So you can actually, I think I have an example. In fact, examples for all these. So let's quickly go through that. So this is an example for gamma to X-rays. I'm very sure at least all of you have done X-ray imaging at least once in a lifetime so far, right? So the idea here is you have an X-ray source, and this is a human being will stand over something like this. And then on the other side, you have a detector. You might remember standing against some film, right? You might be asked to stand against a certain board sort of thing. So this is that board. This is the detector board. And then what happens is like the X-ray source will emit the X-rays. It passes through our body and falls on this film, which can be analog in olden days, but nowadays it is all digital arrangement of sensors, array of sensors. So the wave will pass it through. So based on the material property of our body, some intensity change will happen after this. So till here, everything will be same. After this, there will be some fluctuation here, which will be falling on this 2D array of sensors. And then we will be reconstructing image out of that. And similarly, you can follow the same principle for a gamma rays. So applications, don't think that it is just about human body. You can actually do it for something like angiogram. So some of you are having, let's say your parents are having a heart problem. Most of us might have heard about these angiograms. So that is something like injecting some sort of contrast agent, some sort of medicine into our body, and then use the X-rays for imaging, or CTs. CT and X-ray are the same. They produce X-rays. So they use the same technology as we are outlined here. The only difference is you put some medicine inside so that they react to the X-rays accordingly. And then you see whether you have a serious issue. If you are, let's say the heart is having a valve which is blocked. So you'll be able to see that. This is on the human side. Don't get to the understanding that X-rays are only used there. X-rays are used even to check your PCBs. So defects in your PCBs. After the PCB manufacturing, it is humanly impossible to go and check for any defects in the PCB. So you will use X-ray imaging for that. Okay. So, and then even tumors nowadays, bone and spine tumor, you are actually using a technology which is non-positron emission tomography, PET imaging. So you have X-rays, you have gamma rays, you have positron rays, as well as many other in the same wavelength to create an image out of it. So it's not just about light. It is about the entire electromagnetic spectrum. So another example is infrared. And this is now very hot topic, right? Infrared thermal imaging cameras. With COVID-19, this is sort of mandatory in every place. So here what you do is you basically emit infrared waves and you wait for the reflections to come back, or you can even have the same similar setup as the X-ray, which I have shown you in the previous slide. And then you have an IR detector, which is again an array. You see over here, it's an array of sensors. Okay. So you just get the information through the lens to these arrays, the IR radiations, or IR, we can call it as radiation. Let's say IR waves, you pass it through the lens, you focus them onto these IR arrangement of detectors or sensor arrays, and then you come up with an image. And you can, the best application you can think of is the thermal imaging cameras that we have. So that's another application, yet another application we could say. And microwave imaging is another very popular area nowadays, because it can see through what we can't see. So for example, the concrete rebars in our buildings, in our bridges, for example, they get corroded because they are actually constantly exposed to rain, exposed to water, for example, right? So it gets corroded because they are made out of carbon steel or iron materials, which may get corroded after long point of time. But we can't see that. We can't really open up the bridge and see all the time. We can't open up pipelines all the time to see the corrosion inside. So how do you do that? You have to come up with non-invasive ways to do it, right? So you can actually come up with arrangement something like this, where you send out microwaves. Why microwave? Because it depends on the application. Microwaves are very sensitive to water molecules. You are using microwave technology to heat up things, right, in microwave oven. So what does it does inside? It heats up the water molecules, and that's how your food is getting heated up. So same technology, we use it here for imaging. So you mount microwave sensors. It can be a bunch of them or a single of them. And then you transmit microwave into the concrete block. Then you wait for the reflection to come back. You capture that reflection. Then you use the techniques like beamforming to reconstruct the beautiful images that you see over here. So you see the red is actually showing the corroded bars, and the blue is showing that they are intact. There are no problems. And you can see the picture, what is happening inside. So this is completely corroded. This is uncorroded. And this all, we are not opening up the system. We are talking about completely non-invasive way of judging it from outside, set up like this. So this is the beauty about this area. So all you need is a bunch of sensors. You mount it outside and you see inside. And we are very fascinated by it. The moment I see an image like this, it's like worth 1,000 words, right? You actually can predict a lot of things. And everyone loves this. And it is not about electromagnetic spectrum. We can also talk about sound. So ultrasound is one of the most popular, in fact, quite personal to me also, because I've been working in this area for quite some time. So you send sound waves into the human body at ultrasound frequency range. That means ideally speaking 20 kilohertz and above, because still 20 kilohertz is our audible range. Beyond that, we won't be able to hear anything. So way above 20 kilohertz, in fact, 1 megahertz and above, you send sound wave into the body. It gets reflected from the body back. The transducers will receive them, and then you reconstruct images like this. So here we are seeing the head of a human fetus inside mother's abdomen. So you're taking a picture of a baby even before the baby is born. So that is this amazing field of imaging. I hope I'm able to motivate you. And that's it I wanted to talk today. So this is a very high level overview of this course. And what we are going to talk about is to, as engineers, we often do that, right? We go and sit down, take the system, we open up that system, we will see what is inside. That's exactly this course about. We open up these array imaging systems. We will see what is so peculiar about these sensors. First of all, we also study about the physics of the medium to an extent so that we can appreciate the sensing mechanism. The moment you understand the sensors, we try to put up more than one sensor and see how it behaves. And the moment we have more than one sensor, we have rich information, and we can control the direction of where I want to view, where I want to image, or even I can control the reception and create beautiful images like this we are seeing over here. So that's it, the course all about. So next lecture onwards, we will discuss in detail about each one of these topics in detail. And that's the whole journey is all about. So I will stop now. We do have small amount of time. So this is open for discussion now. If you have any specific questions, any doubts, any contents you want to understand more, or any doubt, any clarifications, something like, oh, this area sounds to be very vague to me. So is it okay for me? Any questions in that direction also are welcome. So please feel free to ask me now or put in the chat window. So I'll just put this slide across so that. Yeah.
Sir, in the cameras, we are using sensors, right? We don't need transducers for camera sensors.
Yeah. Yes. Very good question. Let's start from there. Yeah. You have further question? Yeah. Please go ahead.
If you are using visible light, then what I understand is that we don't need a transducer. So normal sensor would work. But for other frequencies, we'll be needing a transducer because we need to produce those particular frequencies and then try to receive the reflections or something like that.
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. So I would say that how many of you agree that we don't need a transducer for a camera? Yeah, in fact, Daniel's question is perfect. Actually, that's a very good thought-provoking question. So that's answer is correct. We have only, I'm not actually trying to confuse all of you, but I just wanted to drive the thought process because this is definitely a PG elective and we have to actually think through. So coming back to Daniel's question, cameras is only sensors. Agree, 100% is correct. But there is something there in a camera system which actually acts like a transducer setup. What is that? You have it. You just think about it. I'm entering it. Yeah. Go ahead, Daniel.
Is it the flash?
Yes,
the flash?
absolutely. Yes, that's the thought process I want to drive. So here we have a sensor which is passive sensor. It is not bidirectional. You are receiving the light wave. Perfect. No problem. But then we are enter into scenarios where we don't have enough light, right? We have having issues with the light. So what we do, we enable the flashlight. So the flashlight is of course not part of the same set of arrangement. It is something else on the top, but it flashes. So there is a source of light. We are flashing on to the object and the reflections we are capturing through the sensor. But Daniel's answer is correct. We don't need a transducer for a camera to work, but we do have a mimicking sort of setup of a transducer where we have a flashlight which is acting as the actuator. We actually actuate the light and then it falls onto the object and then it gets captured by the arrangement of sensors, the CCD or the CMOS arrangement of sensors, and then we do the imaging. Very good question. Yes.
Sir, but there are some technologies, right? That, for example, the night shots,
Yeah.
where we don't need to use the flash, still we get the clear images, like we are clicking it into the daylight.
Yes.
So
So there is a lot of processing there and a lot of, I would say, a lot of manipulation there. It is not exactly what we get with a flashlight, but it is actually sort of lot of signal processing at the background, but that is correct. But if you want a crystal clear picture of the setup, we need to have a flashlight. So there is low light photography, which is actually exactly what Himanshu was saying. So low light photography is getting a lot of momentum nowadays. And they actually, interestingly, if you dig down and see the details, they actually use more than visible light. They actually use sort of infrared also to get into sort of mimicking the perception that we would have got if we had light, enough light in the system. A lot of processing at the back end. But very good, again, very good thought process. This is the way, in fact, technology also evolves. So people think about, for example, I think the question can be something linked up. So in many cases, you are not allowed to use flashlight. For example, animal photography. So a lot of National Geographic people want to take photos in the night of animals. And if moment you have flashlight, you know what happens, right? The animals get irritated. They may get angry and attack you, or they can actually get irritated and go away. You won't be able to shoot it. So what shall we do? We have to have some technology to overcome that. And that is where this nightlife photography, where the low light photography has gained momentum. And then people have investigated it and understood that something like infrared waves, if processed accordingly, we can able to get similar images as that of an optics or the visible light range. Sort of it's sort of an adding to the original the visible light imaging that we have, and doing a lot of processing at the back end to come up with better images. But of course, we won't get the same quality as the flashlight, but some scenarios mandate that we have to do that. And in fact, night vision has been very popular in armies, right? I mean, you have that. So basically, and you have that, what do you call, the binoculars also, where you put a filter at the top and you see night vision, right? You might have seen that those things also.
Yes, sir.
yes, sir.
And so one more doubt, like in the camera, you said there is the shutter that controls the amount of light that falls on the sensor.
Yes.
So do we have a similar setup in the human eye?
Yes, we have actually sort of, but not the shutter sort of setup, but we do have human eye. Okay, I will put that way. Again, very good question. So what is so different from human eye compared to a digital camera? Can somebody tell?
Is
Or
it
for
like
any camera?
real-time processing?
No, not really. Real-time processing, yeah, we are almost there with we are almost compatible with human eye, most of the cameras. Something beyond, just you are all system on chip design guys as well. I think this class has a good blend of that. So this question is valid to all of you actually. What is the biggest difference, a human eye and a digital camera? Or for that matter, any camera, any analog or digital camera? In fact, the answer to this question, Daniel's, this question is not exactly what I'm going discussing about. The answer to this question is like we do process in human brain, we do process in batches. So we do sort of some, it's like you see multiple things and then process it and then sort of a buffered sort of setup. So there is nothing like storage as in a camera. So you don't have a CMOS or a CCD based storage, light intensity storage system in a human eye. It is just about whenever the light falls, it is processed. So maybe real time from that perspective, Daniel's answer is correct. But there is a much more bigger difference between a human eye and a camera setup. I think my answer also is pointing to that direction. I think it's all related. Maybe I should not tell that Daniel's answer is wrong. It is all related. Human eye processes it in real time and it is analog. It's completely analog. There is no digitization. So there is no quantization problems. There is no storage issues. So both these are coupled. But in the case of a digital or an analog camera, you have to store, right? You have to store the amount of intensity at some point. And that is where this problem comes, because the moment I expose the sensors for a longer time, the problem is you might have played with that. Those who are playing with the camera, you can control the exposure time, right? So you expose it a lot. The problem is like most of it looks white. Everything looks white because all the sensor intensities almost start approaching similar. So you have to control the shutter such a way that you won't allow the things to get saturated. You won't allow the CCD, CMOS cameras, sensors to get filled up, the intensity values, the charge to get filled up, so that you have a fair amount of distinction between the spatial distribution of your object. Otherwise, everything will look alike. So I think maybe I messed it up a bit in between here and there. To answer that question, two things are there. One is already Daniel answered. The real-time processing capabilities, like human brain treats it on the fly. As it comes, it processes it and you are already seeing it. But cameras, it's not like that. It is something like a step-by-step process. Your light falls onto your CMOS or CCD sensors. Then all these things are cleared off to the backend DSP or backend processing unit, and then it processes and create the images, right? So it's a sort of a pipeline process. So falling on to the sensor, then creation of image, it is all done one by one, not together. So you need to wait for some time for each process to happen. And that amounts the storing problem, right? You need to store it. So moment you have to store it, you can't allow the light to fall forever. If you allow forever, then it gets saturated. So that is where your shutter or the exposure time is so important. I hope Daniel answered your question.
Yes, sir. That's clear.
Yeah, very good question. I think you all get fancied by cameras a lot, but in this course, let's actually not get restricted with cameras alone, but we will understand how other imaging is done, because it's more interesting there. Because cameras, I think most of the time we see, right? We already see what is in front. There is nothing hidden there. But in the case of other imaging modalities, our human eyes can't see it. We have to rely on all these different wavelengths, different frequencies, or different modalities like ultrasound to go through and then image it. Human eyes can't see it.
Sir, also when we are imaging using other frequencies, we don't get the actual image like how we are seeing it in the visible light, right?
Yes.
We get,
yes.
like, yeah. Okay. So is there a strive towards achieving the real like the eye vision, something like that, images like that
Yeah.
from the other?
Yes. So for your human bodies, I don't know whether you have heard about endoscopies. So you might have heard about endoscopies where doctors actually put through subject's mouth, they put a small tube sort of, and at the end of that tube, you have a camera. So there will be a camera mounted on the tube and you are asked to swallow like a pill. So something like drugs you take, right? You are asked to swallow. So then this will be guided through your thing, and then you can get an actual picture inside. But that is done actually in invasive technique. So you won't do that. So sometimes you can match like whatever you're getting from a CT scan or an MR scan or an ultrasound scan, you can actually see it through this sort of endoscopic arrangement. Typically doctors do that when they, after the ultrasound or CT or MR, they suspect something cancer or ulcer or something which is, or a hernia inside your body, some sort of infection inside your body, they suspect it using this non-invasive imaging. Then only they do these invasive techniques where you put something inside and then view it. But there are techniques definitely, but not possible in all cases. Something like the corrosion I was talking about, the bridges, for example, right? There's no way. The only way is actually to do something like microwave imaging, where you actually can see it. There's no ground truth. We have to trust them up, and then based on the image, of course, they will break that region and see whether that is really happening. But yeah, there's no way there. But in many other cases, you can have some ground truth.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good questions. Actually, these are thought-provoking questions, and I'm sure even all of you passive people also might have got some thoughts. Oh, okay, so it's interesting. So there are many ways, actually, many things that we need to learn about, right? So all these things probably will cover most of it. Okay, so any more questions? Otherwise, we will wind up this session. Okay, so thanks for joining. So next week, most probably we will not have the live session because I'm traveling. So we will continue in the first week of March. And there is one more thing is like the course registrations are still going on. So even from this group, I'm getting emails saying that some of you are registered but not added to the list. So I'm not very sure any more people are facing that problem. So we will actually go slow in these 2 weeks, this week and next week. And then we will pick up from the first week of March so that registration issues are solved and you also finalize on the courses and all those things, right? So first 2 courses will go a bit slow. We'll try to understand things in a bit more detail. And then we will speed it up from the first week of March, sorry. Okay, so with that, we'll stop for today. And maybe we will see in the first week of March again with a live lecture. Till that time, I will upload maybe a couple of videos, very small videos, which you already studied in your +2 and some understanding of the transducers and all those things. We'll put it up across and then we will discuss on these videos in the next live session so that we will we'll make sure that every one of us are on the same page. Okay, so any other questions, always feel free to ask me over email. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.